Hello, my name is Dottie Kweiglachiru and I'm coming to you from Talk to Dot. At Talk to Dot, I try to create awareness about domestic violence and domestic abuse. What I do is share the light on what you need to look out for so you don't find yourself going into or falling in love with a potentially abusive person. We call them red flags. If you know the red flags, you know what to avoid and what to run away from. Trust me, abusive people cannot be fixed. It's not your job to fix them. Secondly, what I do is I create light on what your relationship is. Some people live in an abusive relationship and they don't know, but they're going through hell and just thinking, this is not normal. So the next thing I do is to share light on that. So if you find out that you're being abused, you take a decision. I'm going to leave. I also help you leave. Because leaving is not just, I'm tired, I'm going to leave. There is a process. If you don't follow the process, you might mash things up for yourself. And sometimes it doesn't end really well. The fourth category I deal with are people who have left an abusive relationship. They struggle with trauma bonding. They struggle with going no contact. They struggle with getting their life back, depression, anxiety, CPTSD. What I do is to guide them through a path of healing, to guide them to reclaiming their life back, to guide them to rediscovering themselves, to their rebirth, so to say. Today, I'm quite excited because I'm interviewing someone who is dear to my heart. She's a friend, she's a mentor, she's a colleague, she's everything. She's a business coach and all. Her name is Yvonne. She is so knowledgeable about domestic abuse and domestic violence. And I'm so glad to have her here with me today, to be interviewing her today. And let us hear about what domestic abuse is from her point of view. Yvonne, can you just give us a quick introduction of who you are?
Hi, I'm Yvonne Egbuna, founder of NECA Professional Development. I'm a coach and I work with women and men to get rid of the word impossible because I don't believe there's such a word. I do this by enabling my clients to create those internal structures that they need for their growth and development. At the end of my sessions, clients always experience freedom from blocks and limiting beliefs. Thank you for having me on this program.
Right. One of the first questions I want to ask you is, what is domestic violence? What is it really? People don't seem to understand what it is. They, people have a perception, but I don't want to preempt you or anything. What is domestic violence?
What is domestic violence? So we define domestic violence or domestic abuse, as both words can be used interchangeably. We define domestic abuse as an incident or a pattern of incidents of controlling, coercive, degrading, threatening, and violent behavior within the home. So typically involving a spouse or a partner.
The other question I want to ask is, what sort of people experience domestic violence? I've heard what you've said, actually, your description of what it is. But there is this myth that it is certain kinds of people that experience domestic violence, maybe uneducated people, people without career, people that have issues, or people that like being abused. So what sort of people experience domestic violence, in your opinion, based on your knowledge of the subject area?
You can experience domestic abuse. Anyone can experience domestic abuse. The beautiful, the not so beautiful, the tall, the not so tall, the plump, the not so plump, the educated, the not so educated, the religious, the not very religious. Any kind of person can experience domestic abuse.
The other question that people ask me all the time is, can abusive people change? Because I come in contact with a lot of men and women that believe that they can change these people. They believe that there must be a method, there must be a way to help these troubled souls. So, can abusive people change? Is there hope for an abusive person in a relationship? Is there hope for, not for an abusive person, is there hope for a victim to potentially change their abusive partner?
Can an abusive person change? The honest answer to that is, I don't know. I really don't know. Studies have shown that it is really difficult for an abuser to change. what they say happens is they change their tactics. I am yet to find a story or someone who has actually come to me and said, "Oh, my abuser changed. He's changed for the better." I think that I think abusers are kind of born with some intricate sort of characteristics, some ingrained personality traits that then makes it possible for them to become abusers. So because of those traits that are kind of inborn, given the right circumstances and the right environment, they will then thrive in abuse. So it's really difficult for me to answer that question. I think the debate is out on that.
This one I like a lot because, I mean, to be honest, every day I get this question. I see it, I read it, I get it sent to me directly is, why don't women leave abusive relationship? And I mean, obviously they're having a hard time. Obviously they get beat up, they get put down, shouted at, treated like trash. Why don't they leave? You would think that normally a person who is going through such a horrific situation, such a vile situation, would just get up and go. Why don't they leave?
Why don't people leave domestic violence? There's a number of reasons why people choose to stay. First and foremost, usually top of that list is the children. People say, "Oh, we want the children to grow up in two-parent homes," so they stay. The other reason is religion. So lots of practicing Christians will say, "Well, God hates divorce," and so they will stay in that situation. The third reason why people don't leave domestic violence is fear. So there's a fear, first of all, of what people will say. So that's outside. But there's also the fear of what the perpetrator or their abuser could do to them if they left. Okay. Don't forget that this is a relationship that has been built on fear. So fear is the defining factor. So they find it really difficult to leave. And then there's the other reason of denial. A lot of people who are in those situations live in denial. There's two ways of looking at denial. First of all, is saying they may be aware of the abuse that they're facing, but don't want to accept it. The second level of that denial is they're not even aware. So even when other people see the abuse and point it out to them, they can't see it themselves because they're in it, they're in the middle of that situation. It's really difficult for them to be objective, stand outside that situation, looking inwards and seeing the abuse. So there's the two levels of denial there. So there's several reasons why people do not leave domestic violent situations, and these are just only 4 reasons I've given here.
Now, one thing that people need to understand is when you stay in an abusive relationship, potentially certain things might happen to you, to your health, to your life, to your mental health and well-being, all of that stuff. What are the impacts potentially of remaining in an abusive relationship, in a violent relationship, non-violent relationship, whatever one they find themselves? What is the impact? What are some of the impacts of staying in such a relationship?
Impacts of staying in an abusive situation. There's a lot of impact on all negative. There's a loss of self-esteem. There's a loss of your identity. So you start to lose your identity of who you are as a person, as an individual. There also could be lack of confidence. So even if you were once a really confident person, you find yourself just lacking the confidence to do things that normally you should be able to do. The other impact is usually in abusive situations, your relationships with people suffer. So a lot of people that have gone through abuse have often said that their abusers always try to isolate them from their friends and family, the network. So your relationships with the outside world really reduces. One other impact I can think of straight away from remaining in an abusive situation is your ability to achieve. So like some people are they're really driven, very ambitious, they are very talented people, but because they've found themselves entangled in an abusive relationship, all of the things that they could have been doing, they can't get to doing. It's a really negative cycle. It keeps you kind of suppressed and oppressed, such that your talent is not able to come out. There's many more impacts of remaining in an abusive relationship. That's just a few.
So, thank you for that. Thank you for that. Really helpful. And I hope that people are listening, because this is not coming from me. This is coming from someone else who knows the subject area very well. Obviously, you find her links in the bottom, and there I will also post links to some of my playlists that talk about in more details some of the subject areas that we're touching at the moment. Yvonne, I cannot honestly thank you for your comments, for coming on board this interview, for sharing your knowledge and your light.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me on your program, and it's been a pleasure. Thanks.
People, this is Yvonne. Like I told you at the beginning, she's going to be an amazing person to listen to. She knows her stuff. She knows her ins and outs of domestic violence. Thank you, Yvonne, for coming on board. So glad to have you here. We will post your details in the description below. Ladies and gentlemen, this is me, Talk to Dot. If you are in an abusive relationship, know that it is not your fault and you are not alone. Please talk to someone. If you have no one else to talk to, please talk to Dot. One love, peace, guidance, and respect.